to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there is a problem with access. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. With regard to providing, with regard to providing public access to the meeting, we are utilizing the Zoom platform for the electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through clicking on the following website, www.zoom.us/J/7540766629, or by dialing the following phone number. Sam, can you give me the phone number for City Hall, because I've got the wrong number sitting here in my meeting minute notice here. If you could just tell me the number that they should call.
It's 603-225-8515.
Okay, so 555-1212 is not right in my little notes here. And entering the password 7540766629. For those calling in who want to provide public testimony, please dial *9 to alert the host that you want to speak. The host will unmute you during the public hearing portion of the meeting. With regard to providing public notice to this meeting, we previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the City of Concord's website at www.concord.nh.gov/273/planning-4. With regard to providing the public with a way to alert us about access problems, if anyone has a problem, please call that same number, 603-225-8515, or send an email to planning@concordnh.gov. With regard to adjourning the meeting, if the public is unable to access the meeting, in the event that the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by a roll call vote, and each member states their presence. Also, please state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. With that, let's get started by taking a roll call attendance. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll? Heather, can you call the roll? You're muted.
I apologize. I forgot. I'm never okay. Muted. I was muted. Chairman Woodfin?
Here.
Okay. Member Regan?
Here.
Member Hicks?
I'm here and in the room alone.
Oh,
Councilor Pierce?
I'm here in my home office alone.
Member Rosenberger?
I am here with the dog somewhere.
And I'll just note that for the public who may be watching, we do have staff on the call on the video. We have City Engineer David Cederholm and planning staff Beth Fenstermacher and Sam Durfee.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. With that, we will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted from the April 15th meeting. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved. So moved. Second.
Motion was made by Councilor Pierce and seconded by John Regan. If we could get a roll call vote on approval of that nomination. Vote.
Chairman Woodfin?
Yes.
Member Regan?
Yes.
Member Hicks?
Yes.
Councilor Pierce?
Yes.
Member Rosenberger?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to item 4 on our agenda item. We've got a quick agenda overview. Nothing's been pulled from the agenda tonight. All items will be heard, so if you're on, the public is listening, we will hear all the items. I do want to make make a comment regarding the consent agenda items because we're going to address that quickly. So as part of our normal approval process, we place items for approval on a consent agenda. Tonight, those items will be addressed as item 6. If any member of the public who wishes to speak in opposition to items 6B through 6F, please make yourself known to the city staff now by either raising your hand in the Zoom meeting or dialing 9. And we will take the first item on our agenda, which is a determination of completeness, and then we will go to the applications by consent. So item 5 on our agenda is an application by developer John Chorley on behalf of the Roman Catholic Bishop of Manchester for an 8-unit condominium development at 131 North State Street in the neighborhood residential or RN district. Staff has reviewed the application and determined it complete and that the project does not meet the criteria for development of regional impact. This is only a determination of completeness component. Would someone like to make a motion to find the application complete, not a development of regional impact, and set the public hearing for the June 17th, 2020 Planning Board meeting?
Can I just interrupt? I apologize. I want
Yep.
for the record, before you make a motion and vote, that member Foss did join us. She joined as attendees and I promoted her to panelist. So Carol, can you just confirm that you can hear us and that you can speak? You should be unmuted, Carol.
Okay.
We're having a little bit of trouble with your audio. Carol, according to my screen, Carol, your video is turned off. So if you would like to turn your video on, I don't think I can do it from my end, but you should be able to do it from your end. So she's muted herself now and she has her video turned off. So
okay.
I would
we
say
did hear her speak, so hopefully she we did hear her speak, so hopefully
Yep.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
I am here. If I can figure out how to get my video going, I will do so. I am in the room alone.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so before us, we've got a determination of completeness that I read into the record. Would someone like to make a motion to find that application complete, not a development of regional impact, and set the public hearing for June 17th, 2020 Planning Board meeting?
Councilor Pierce
Make that motion.
moves.
Councilor Pierce made that motion. Matt, you want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Do a roll call, Heather, on that for approval?
Chairman Woodfin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foss. You're muted, but I
Can't
can
hear
see
you.
that you're trying to say yes. There we
Yes.
go. Okay. Member Regan,
Yes.
Member Hicks,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Member Rosenberger.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion for determination of completeness is approved, and that public hearing will be set for June 17th. That moves us to item 6 on our agenda, which is design review applications by consent. Have we got anybody at the board level that would like to pull any of the items 6B? I guess there's no 6A, but 6B through 6F on our agenda. Any member of the board wish to pull any of those items off from consent? No? Any member of the audience wish to address any of these applications? If you could make yourself known to staff quick. John, I see your hand up. Is that a hand up or is that just moving your camera?
No, I unmuted myself, Rich,
Okay.
so I can vote.
All right, thank you. Okay, so seeing none, we'll address all those items by consent. Would someone like to make a motion to approve those items that are on the consent agenda item, again, 6B, C, D, E, and F by consent? Someone like to make a motion to approve those with architectural design review application notes?
I
So
move
moved.
approval. Second.
Okay, I think we got a motion and a second. All those in favor, again, by roll call vote, Heather?
Chairman Woodfin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foss,
Yes.
Member Regan,
Yes.
Member Hicks,
Yes.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes.
and Member Rosenberger.
Yes.
For the record, to help clarify, can we, whoever did the second, we have a hand raised? Who did the second? Was it Counselor Pierce?
It was
I'm
John
not sure
Regan.
who seconded. Oh, okay. Thank you,
John
John.
Regan.
So Carol made the motion, John second. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that will move us on, moving right along to our public hearing section. We'll move into site plan subdivisions, conditional use permit applications under item 7A. Madam Clerk, if we could read that one into the record.
Mike Snedeker requests minor site plan approval for the conversion of a commercial unit to a residential unit, which will result in a total of 3 residential units at 75 Allison Street in the neighborhood residential district. I think we may have an update from Sam, and I will try to figure out who from the attendees would like to speak on behalf of this application. For attendees, if there's someone here that would like to speak, could you raise your hand so that I could allow you to talk?
Okay, staff has reviewed this application, determined it complete, and that it's not a project of regional impact. Would someone like to make a motion to find the application complete, not a development of regional impact, and open the public hearing?
Counselor Pierce
moved.
moves.
Okay, Councilor Pierce moves. Carol, can we have you second that?
Sure. Second.
Okay, so motions are made and seconded. Again, all those in favor. It's a little harder to do a roll call vote every time, but it's unfortunately what we've got to do. So if we could have a roll call vote on the determination of completeness component for this, and then we'll open the public hearing.
Chairman Woodfin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foss,
Yes.
Member Regan,
Yes.
Member Hicks,
Yes.
Counselor Pierce,
Yes.
Member Rosenberger.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing. If we can get a quick staff update on this project.
Sure. So the applicant is proposing to convert an existing commercial unit into a residential unit. And he's received a number of variances at the March 4th ZBA hearing. These include some dimensional variances for lot conformance.
Hang on, Sam. Hey, Sam. Hang
As
on.
well as,
Can we have Mr. Seneca mute or turn off the audio because it's feeding back in our feedback. There you go. Keep going, Sam. Thank you.
sure. And the variance is also for parking as well. So the applicant has provided us with a couple of plans, one of which is a survey plan showing boundaries and existing extent of paving as well as proposed extent of paving. There will be an increase in impervious coverage. The applicant does have to go to the June ZBA hearing to receive a variance, so you'll notice that one of the conditions of approval is to get a variance for increase in lot coverage over what is allowed in this district. The applicant is taking some of the pavement out from the front of the building, which right now it is all just a complete, almost a full curb cut, fully paved, replacing with grass and a few trees as well. And I'll let the applicant speak to the rest of this project.
Okay, is the applicant online, ready to roll?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Yes, I'm here. Can you hear
Yep,
me?
we can hear you. Go ahead. If you could tell us a little bit about your project.
All right. So basically, I purchased a building on 75 Allison Street. I went to the zoning board for an approval for the variance and everything to get a commercial space out of that area and put a residential unit in there. I've had great support in the neighborhood from the neighbors and everything. With zoning, I need a 13-foot aisle. So for maneuvering for the parking. So I obtained the variance for the 5 spaces. But when I had the site plan drawn by the architect, there was a little discrepancy. So we ended up getting the property surveyed, which brought up the fact of increasing the lot coverage. So that's why I need to go back over there. So basically the project in a nutshell is just bringing a much desired residential apartment to that location, making everybody happy in the neighborhood and bringing curb appeal back to it without the busy commercial space. And I'm open if anyone has any questions or anything.
Okay. If we could just have you mute until we come back to you, that would be great. Any questions from any of the members of the board regarding this? This is a small house between, I think, South Street and Broadway. As you're going west from Broadway, it'll be on your left-hand side. It's been a variety of different commercial spaces on the first floor. I think there's apartments on the second floor. I'm certainly in favor of returning it to a residential format. I am a little concerned about how tight the parking plan is. So I don't know if there's any members of the audience regarding this, if there's any butters or anybody that would like to speak. Heather, if you can promote anybody that would like to speak regarding this application, we'll take public testimony at this point. Anybody? You're muted. Heather.
Yeah, I don't see anyone raising their hand. I'm not sure if they know how. So on the screen, I don't see a. Oh, okay. I think on your screen you can click that you have a question or that you can raise. You should be able to raise your hand if any member of the audience is. I don't think there's anyone there. Oh, here's somebody who's raised their hand.
Listed.
So this
Mac
person
has a question.
Yep, and I'm unmuting them. I can't. I don't seem to be able to unmute him. So, can you unmute yourself? There you go. You're unmuted now. Could you state your name for the record?
Yes, Michael Snedeker. I had a letter attached to the file from the neighbor at 11 Kimball Street.
Okay.
Turn your speaker down or something. That's great.
That's weird.
You got another speaker going on. It's awful feedback coming through the line there.
He's listed twice.
How come we got 2 listed twice? Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
That's better.
Okay. So I have a letter on file from 11 Kimball Street, which is the property that's directly abutting it, which I'm doing the pavement right up to his line.
Yeah, that's
is
true.
that letter part of the public record?
If it's not in the packet, we must have received it too late to get it in, but I do have it right in front of me. I'll read it into the record. This is from Christopher Graham and Cheryl Borsana at 11 Kimball Street. To whom it may concern, I live at 11 Kimball Street, Concord, New Hampshire. My property abuts 75 Allison Street, Concord, New Hampshire. I have seen the plans that Mike Snedeker is proposing to do at 75 Allison, and I think it would be a good improvement to the neighborhood by creating more residential apartments and eliminate the commercial space that has been in that building. His plan to modify the driveway will allow easier parking is good. Feel free to contact me at 1566 or gallup1007@yahoo.com if you have any questions. So he's in support.
Okay, Sam, thank you for reading that in. And I do see it as part of our supplemental package. There's just too many buttons to push here to figure it out. Okay, so again, what's going to be the zoning requirements regarding parking? So if you look at your plans, if the board can look at their plan set, you've got Allison Street would be at the top of the plan, and I'm looking at 75 Allison Street will be at the top of the plan. You're going to have a driveway that comes in, a parking space immediately next to the building, and then 4 angle-in parking spots. So if you're in one of those 4 angle-in parking spots, you're going to be angled in front-wise. You're going to be backing up, I don't know, 30, 40 feet straight back out onto Allison Street. So what are the zoning requirements, Sam, from an analysis perspective that either they're going to have to get variances for, as far as how that works with what is it, a 4-unit apartment or a 3-unit apartment?
3. So by zoning, he's required 6 spaces. He did receive a variance to allow for 5 on site, where 6 is required. He also received a variance to allow for a driveway aisle of 13 feet, where the minimum is 18. Also to allow a parking configuration that does not provide adequate on-site room for maneuvering and requires vehicles to back into and maneuver into the street to exit the parking area. And he also received the variance to pave up to the property line, which is within the 5-foot minimum setback. So he's covered by his variances to do what is shown on the plans.
Okay. Any member of the board have any questions regarding this application? You can just wave your hand up if you've got a question. If anybody has a question, want to ask a question? No? No more members of the audience. Heather or Sam? Okay. All right. So we'll close the public hearing regarding this application. Again, in front of us, we have some waivers and minor site plan approval. So I apologize, I'm going to read this a little bit closer here. Okay, so in our packet here under 4.1 is to grant the following waivers from the subdivision regulations regarding utilizing the criteria from RSA 643-36-3 and 2, specific circumstances relative to the subdivision or conditions of the land in such subdivision indicate that the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations. That's a waiver on 12.03 plan certification, 12.04 location plan, 12.05 city plan, 12.06 plan reference, 12.08 electronic submission, 15.02 site plan requirements, and 15.04 proposed site plan. A lot of waivers. Would someone like to make a motion to grant those waivers as outlined in our packet under 4.1?
I move that we grant the waivers as outlined.
Okay, that was Councilor Pierce. Someone like to second that motion?
Second.
John Regan, I second it.
Okay, it's been seconded by John Regan and a couple other people. Okay, all those in favor, let's take a roll call vote on that, Heather, if we could. Sorry, I'll do them together next time. I'll learn my lesson.
Chairman Woodford,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foss,
Yes.
Member Regan,
Yes.
Member Hicks,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Member Rosenberger.
Yes.
Okay, and 4.2, which is to grant the minor site plan approval for the minor site plan at 75 Allison Street, subject to the following precedent conditions. That's precedent condition A 1 through 5, and subsequent conditions 1 through 3. Someone like to make a motion to grant that minor subdivision approval, site plan approval as outlined? Anybody?
I'll move approval. John Regan.
Now everybody's.
Second,
So somebody raised, okay, so I got a second from Carol. Who made the motion? John?
John?
Yes.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Roll call vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Member Woodfin? Okay.
Aye.
Vice Chair Foss?
yes,
Member Regan?
Yes, and I.
Member Hicks?
Yes.
Counselor Pierce?
Yay.
And Member Rosenberger?
yes.
Okay, so that motion carries, so that application is complete, ready to go. Mr. Snedeker, you're all set. Good luck with the next step, and love to see the project completed. Thank you very much. All right, let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item 7B. Madam Clerk, could you read that into the record?
Richard Bartlett and Associates, on behalf of Winter Street Investments, requests minor subdivision approval for the conversion of an existing duplex to a 2-unit condominium at 1 and 3 By Street in the neighborhood residential district. This is a continuation from last month, and I believe we do have an update from staff.
Okay, let's get a staff update on this.
Sure. The majority of the reason why this was tabled last month is there were issues with the sewer and the request to video the entire line. I will let Dave Cedarholm speak to the solution that the applicant came to with engineering. All outstanding comments from planning have been addressed, other than we still need to see the declarations of condominium.
Okay. You're on, Dave.
So this is Dave Cedar. Is it, you want me to address it now? Is that it?
Please, if you could. Just give us a quick update
so
from last
applicant-
month. If you remember last
Sure.
month,
So-
I think they came in and proposed it, and we had some concerns regarding just seeing a little bit of it video as opposed to how much is down the middle of the street and under the building and all that. So if you could just give us a quick overview and an update, that'd be great.
Sure. So the applicant, after taking assessing what they would need to do potentially if this 240-foot sewer was problematic, they took a closer look at what it would take to actually connect to the sewer on By Street instead of utilizing the existing sewer service out the back. They have since decided to reroute the sewer service for the building and tie into the service, the sewer on By Street. I think it's a good solution. They've done a nice job of coming up with an adequate design. It's actually a much shorter length. They're be totally independent of the other sewer service that the neighbor connected to. And they also addressed our issue with the independent water services. So at the same time, they'll be running independent water services out to the water line on By Street. So they've also provided a site plan that shows details on the parking on the west side of the building. So they've adequately addressed all of engineering's concerns. Looks good.
Well, that's good to hear. Great. Is the applicant here? And have we pushed them up,
Yep,
Heather, to speak?
Yep. I have Dan Mullen, who I have allowed to speak.
Yes, I'm here.
He should be unmuted
Anything,
now.
Mr. Mullen, do you want to add anything to the discussion, Mr. Mullen?
Mr. Cedarholm did an excellent job of outlining the engineering comments. I think that was the brunt of the issue last month. But basically the applicant is just taking an existing duplex and converting it to a 2-unit residential condominium. And we have provided all the floor plans for that, and the details of the parking and the sewer and the water are shown on that plan.
Great. Any member of the board wish to address this application? Any questions, comments, concerns regarding the application in front of us? any member of the audience wish to address this application, if you could make yourself known to the staff, raising your hand or hitting *9 on our call-in line, we will promote you to allow you to speak at this time. Anybody have it?
I don't see anyone there. No.
Okay. So just if they do pop in, just let me know, and we'll go over for a sec. Okay, so in our packet, thank you, Mr. Rowland, for your testimony. In our packet, we have before us a couple items. We've got a waiver request and a subdivision approval request. We're going to take those jointly together unless somebody has an issue with either one of them. But I'm going to address item 4.1, which is to grant waiver from section 1502.3 of the subdivision regulations utilizing criteria from RSA 674-36-2 and 2, specific circumstances relative to a subdivision or a condition of the land in which in such subdivision indicate that the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulation. And 4.2, which is to grant minor subdivision approval to the 2-unit condominium minor subdivision at 1 and 3 By Street, subject to the following conditions to be fulfilled within 1 year and prior to endorsement of the final plan by the planning board chair and clerk unless otherwise specified. So the conditions are outlined in 1 through 7. Would someone like to make a motion to grant those waivers and grant the minor subdivision approval as so eloquently read into the record? Would someone like to make that motion?
I move
So moved.
that we grant both the waiver and the minor subdivision approval.
Okay, motion's been made by Councilor Pierce. Carol, can I have a second from you? Okay, motion's been made and seconded to grant that waiver and the minor subdivision approval with Carol second. Would someone, would we take a roll call vote, Heather, on that?
Chairman Woodfin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Foss,
Yes.
Member Regan,
Yes.
Member Hicks,
Yes.
Councilor Pierce,
Yes.
Member Rosenberger.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. That's all set. So thank you for engineering and everyone working together on that. Sounds like a good solution was brought forward. Let's go to our next item on our agenda, which is item 7C, Bedford Design Consultants. If we could read that into the record, Madam Clerk.
Bedford Design Consultants, on behalf of RJ Moreau Communities, requesting an amendment to a previously approved major subdivision plan to revise the street plantings on Sonoma Lane and Kyle Road, and to amend the roundabout reconfiguration requirements at Ellis Drive and the single-family residential district. This is previously, it doesn't need a determination completeness or DRI. I believe staff has an update.
Okay, great. If we could get a staff update on that, that would be great.
So this amendment is covering 2 items. One is the landscaping on Kyle Road and Sonoma Lane. The original approval in 2011 had a significant number of trees that exceeded what was the requirement. And now that they've gone into construction, they've realized that it's overcrowded. And also it previously was approved to have the planting between the sidewalk and the street. And we recognize that it's more beneficial to the trees if they're planted on the backside of the sidewalk, and that's what they're requesting. So staff is supportive of the proposed landscape changes within the subdivision. The second one is regarding the roundabout that's in the adjacent subdivision that back in 2011, it was a condition of the waiver approval to not provide a traffic study to upgrade the roundabout at that time because people were driving straight through instead of going around the roundabout because it was so wide. But 9 years later, seeing that that's not really an issue anymore, roundabouts were relatively new back then. People are now learning how to drive through roundabouts. We have not heard any complaints. I checked with Martha Drucker in engineering. She said traffic ops has not received complaints. We recognize and the Bedford Design has pointed out that the proposed redesign is a bit of a tighter as far as drainage, and it could cause more of an issue if they tear up the pavement. And those two sections that they're proposing, and General Services agreed with that. They wanted to leave the pavement as is. It seems to be working. The only issue at hand is that there was a waiver granted with the condition, with the knowledge that this was being redesigned. So I just want to put that out for their planning board. We had put a recommendation that if you do approve them removing this requirement, that we get a memo from a traffic engineer that is asserting that it does work as designed, as currently designed and currently built, and update any new trips with the current standards, and for engineering to review that. Dave Cedarholm's also on the line, and he can, engineering division was also in support of granting this request and not build the roundabout. So I don't know if Dave, you want to speak now, or if you want to wait. Katie Weiss is on the phone from Bedford Design if you want them to present first.
Well, I'll say something real quick. In addition, one of the comments that engineering submitted was the need for a bit of a traffic study in the short term, and that is something that engineering could do to see what speeds and the traffic counts actually going through that roundabout. Right now, with the COVID-19 situation and the reduced amount of traffic everywhere, that's probably wouldn't be the best time to do that study. So once normal traffic resumes later, maybe in the summer and the fall, we could do that traffic count to see what are the average speeds and also what are the traffic volumes running through there, which would give us an indication of are the number of cars going through there equivalent to what was expected at this time when the development was originally proposed.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Dave. And you said we do have the applicant on the line, and we can open a public hearing and invite the applicant to add any points that haven't been addressed, or add anything they'd like to add to the discussion.
This is Katie Weiss with Bedford Design Consultants. I'm here with Reggie Moreau, the owner. They both pretty much got all the points I was going to make. Basically, what we'll be proposing for the landscaping change on Sonoma Lane is basically 2 trees per lot, and corner lots would get 4 trees. So it's still a lot of trees per lot, and the trees are now farther from the road, so they're actually within that 10 feet from the property line, so they're farther from the road, which I think will allow them to have a better chance of surviving, especially before they were really cramped in that little tiny street tree strip. So that's a pretty simple change for the landscaping. What else was there for the landscaping? That's it for that. So the roundabout, I guess, is the next issue. So in a 2011 approval process, as was mentioned, there were thought to be some issues with speed in the cul-de-sac. If you'll take a look at the May 14th letter that I sent, the first picture on the second page is an overview of the site. Yeah. I'll wait for the picture to come up.
Okay.
Second page, there we go. So the orange arrow is the Alice Drive cul-de-sac. The blue arrow, you can see the construction going on Sonoma Lane. So that's where we're looking. That roundabout is on Alice Drive, which runs north-south. So if you go to the next picture down, you can see the roundabout close up. There's a small island in the center with grass, and then there is a brick island kind of around that. That's flush with the pavement, so it's kind of like almost painted on kind of look to it. The grass island actually has a vertical granite curb, so that's not something that people are jumping over. We did take some pictures, which you'll see later on. There's no rutting or anything from anyone running over the island. But you can see that you really can't go straight through. You do have to go around the roundabouts to get all the way through for Alice Drive. If you go down, one more picture. The next page has two more pictures. These are pictures of the roundabout at the moment. So as you can see, there's the vertical granite curb in the grassed area, and then you can see the red kind of brick area, which you can drive over. Currently, there's no plantings in there at all. If you go to the next two pictures, the one on the top is the Alice Drive roundabout to the north. It's the same configuration as what we have right now. There's just plantings that the local neighborhood people have planted in it. So that's really the only difference. We're also proposing plantings, so it would look similar. And we believe that by adding the plantings, if you just look at it right now at the northern Alice Drive roundabout, it looks different. And I think that by adding in plantings on the southern one, it will really make people go slower than they're going now because it isn't a wide open space. And then the lower picture, this is a picture of wider islands that are to the northwest because there's some other roundabouts along, I believe it's Emily. And so this is kind of what we'd be looking at in terms of size if we expanded our center island. So there's people that planted some, it's just a lot of extra grass space, and I don't know how well plantings would look in it. You can see that there are some smaller plantings. Again, I think those were planted by the neighborhood. If we go back up to the existing roundabout, yeah, there, thank you. There are areas we show in our proposed 2011 design. I don't know if you have that. I think I sent the 2011 roundabout plan, Beth. I don't know if you have it.
Give me it.
Okay.
I do. Just give me a second to pull it up.
Sure. It's a lot to skip around.
I'm unable, Heather, to view the supplemental in my Granicus packet. I don't know if it's not working. When I click on the supplemental link, it's giving me a error, an unexpected 410 error. It won't open up. So this stuff that's on screen and any of the records, I don't have in my packet. I did get them from the agenda.
I have the same thing, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So I did see them from the agenda, but I just, for the record, if we could just, I don't know if you need to fix that or not on the Granicus side. They do work on the agenda side. Okay, go ahead, Beth. Sorry.
Should be up now.
There we go. Okay. So if you look at this picture, there are some striped areas on the left and the right of the island, and those were areas where we were going to shim up the pavement, so basically add pavement to those areas to move the drainage that was draining to the middle out to the left and right along Alice Drive. So the contours on here that you can see are 0.2 foot contours. So normally you see 2 foot contours. These are 0.2 foot. So it's a very flat area here. Most of it is 1%, 1.3, 1.0%. So the shimming on the left side, portions of that ended up being at 0.6%. So that's what we were talking about. The issue with puddling could still happen. And now that we're moving all of the water to the left and right instead of the center, there could be a problem with the puddling. So I just wanted to show that that was our original plan. And you can see the larger island and then the landscaping on the left were just a few large trees. But you can see if you look in the center, there's a little circle that's a sewer line. And then to the left and the right of the grass circle are little catch basins. So the catch basins would obviously, in this iteration, no longer be working as catch basins for road drainage. They would just be for any island drainage. So I think that drainage-wise, it makes a lot of sense to leave the cul-de-sac as is. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say on the cul-de-sac and the landscaping. If anyone has any questions for me or for Reggie, we're both here.
Are these bigger than normal size roundabouts? They look just gigantic in those pictures at street level. I know they look bigger than the ones even in town Concord and say the one on the road going up to Bosquen. They look much larger than those existing ones.
I could comment on that. They definitely are. In fact, this roundabout is about 50% larger than the roundabout we have in the center of Pennacook, and also the new roundabout we built at Manor and Abbott.
Okay, so any other public testimony? Heather, do we have anybody else that would like to speak regarding this? I see a couple hands up. Can't hear you. Heather?
Yes, we have several people's hands up. I'm going to allow to talk. I have Richard Nugent, at least that's what it says on my list. So could you state your name for the record?
Hi, my name is Richard Nugent. I live at 57 Alice Drive, and I'm in the room with my wife.
Okay. Thank you.
As far as comments, I've lived here since 2005. The circles are larger because this was one of the first developments, I believe, that had circles. So they were made, the neighborhood was designed to have these circles to address why they're so large. I would say this is probably similar in size to the ones in Bosquen. The larger circle that is existing where we had planted the lilacs a couple years ago, or last year, I believe, we had done that in anticipation of trying to landscape all the circles. When the proposal was made in 2011 to add this subdivision, the initial one was to landscape that, and we had tried to mimic that, and it would have been about $15,000 according to what RJ Moreau had initially proposed. The residents of this neighborhood decided we couldn't afford to do the 5 other circles that way, so that's why we did Alice, doing it the way it was, and we decided not to landscape the southern one on Alice adjacent to Kyle, because it was understood that that was going to be expanded like the other existing circles in the neighborhood. As far as the speed study, I have cameras on my house that show the northern circle, and cars speed through here daily. As far as traffic, and I'm not going to throw any particular contractors under the bus here, but developers and traffic going into the vineyards there's no construction vehicles, so they all go through our neighborhood. So they access Alice Drive through one of the 2 side streets coming off of Fisherville, and then when they come to that circle, they take a left directly onto Kyle. They do not go through the circle. I have a number of times almost come head on into trucks and vehicles going onto the brick park. I've called supervisors. I've called, the names off the trucks, and they're like, yeah. So it's really irritating that vehicles it's more than wide enough for 2 cars to go through the circle. I've had people pass me because I like to do 22 and a 25. And that's where the people pass, is going through the circles. They'll ditch down towards the left and pass you. I don't understand why people this is a neighborhood full of kids. There's 102 houses in Sandwood Crossing. And I would venture a guess that 95 of them have children school age. As far as the drainage easements, there's no pooling or puddling with the 3 other larger circles in the development. They would drain to the outer edge where she was talking about shimming it. I don't see a problem with that. As far as those 2 drainages that are existing there where it does go down, I don't have a problem with those being filled in or capped when they redo it. But we landscaped that northern circle in anticipation of the southern one being landscaped. And that's why we tried to mimic the trees and the plantings to eventually try and slow down traffic. It's a rare occasion, but almost every winter we've had pickup trucks or vehicles drive directly over the southern circle and doing donuts. The lawn's been torn up more than twice. that I'm aware of. Like I said, I've lived here since '05. I've lived here 15 years. I want to say back in '06 or '07, engineers met, police chief met, planning board. There were a bunch of people that had met when there was initially a gate that blocked Alice Drive from Mass Yard West and all that. And they had said if there was ever another subdivision with all this large property behind the vineyards, that circle be improved. So we've been waiting 15 years for that circle to be designed properly, to only allow traffic to go in one direction as opposed to now where two directions are even passing. I understand people are going to pass. They pass in other neighborhoods. It is what it is. But I would like to see that circle to be mimicked like the others and not left as is. As far as what they had proposed for initial landscaping, if they wanted to buy the material at Black Forest Nursery, where we purchased ours for the northern circle, and mimic exactly what we have, the material was less than $3,000, and I don't have a problem with that. And to briefly address the landscaping for Sonoma, I do think it's better for the trees not to be in that strip between the sidewalk and the street. So I do agree with that, and I propose that be accepted. But as far as the circle, I'm sure a lot of residents, there are probably others that want to see this meeting, to have that circle mimic like the other three in our development, so it's larger for safety.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from the board of this applicant, of this gentleman, Mr. Nugent?
This is Councilor Pierce. I walked that neighborhood, and this gentleman is correct. There are tons of children over there. I do see a lot of speeding down Alice Drive in between the two roundabouts. I think the roundabouts are almost too large, because when you get to it, there is plenty of room to just take your left and not go all the way around. So I would certainly like to see something done. My question, though, mainly is the plantings. The northernmost Alice Drive roundabout looks great, especially this time of year with the flowers. But I'm wondering, eventually, can they get too tall and limit the sight lines of people coming into the roundabout? And I'd be interested in someone with more experience than I. Is that a bad thing? To answer that question. So I don't know, David, if you can answer it, or someone from Bedford Design.
I don't know, Dave, do you have any thoughts on that, Dave Cedarholm?
Could you restate the question?
Can the trees in the middle of the roundabout get too big where it would affect the sight lines?
Typically in roundabouts, and the city's got a number that have some pretty sizable trees. It's usually a benefit to have large shrubs and trees that actually obstruct the view. It slows the vehicles down because they can't see across and anticipate, okay, where they're going. So contrary to what people would think, that having large vegetation in a roundabout, it actually ends up being a traffic calming measure.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nugent, for your testimony. Heather, do we have anybody else that would like to speak? I see another hand up. No, you're still on mute. Hello? Just leave it on.
So we do, I know. So we do have more public testimony, and Katie Weiss has raised her hand to speak. So you can either let all the public testimony and then allow Katie to.
Yeah, I want to let all the public testimony go through. So Katie, keep your hand up, and that's fine. We'll come back to you. But I see, what is it? Michelle has got her hand up. So let's promote her and let her speak.
Hi, my name is Michelle Dearman. I'm here with my husband, Dan. We live on 7 Kyle Road. We've been here since 2006, so we've seen a lot of the change and the progress. And I have a few things. I feel that the roundabout needs to be improved as it was previously requested for a few reasons. The traffic volume has increased significantly, and I expect it to increase more with 22 new homes going in Sonoma, so I expect that to be another 40 cars a day, give or take. Also, since the gate has been opened to the vineyards, I don't know this for a fact, but it feels like the majority of the traffic that I see is cutting through Kyle right to the vineyards. And I think sometimes when people they don't live in the neighborhood, they're not quite so worried about what their speed is because it's not their neighborhood. They just kind of buzz right through. So the traffic is definitely an issue as well, the speeding. And honestly, we stopped complaining because, 10 years ago, we were told that there's not much we can do. The traffic seems maybe worse to us because we live here. So I think that might speak to why you're not receiving a lot of complaints. Plus, we also had the expectation that this roundabout would be improved and hopefully help. So I wouldn't complain about something that I think is already in the works. Another piece of it is, I know a few people have said this, but people absolutely avoid the circle by just turning as if it's a stop sign, like a left or a right instead of going around it. It happens frequently. So I could be walking and I could watch a car just, they'll come up from one of those side roads and take a left on the Kyle without going around the circle at all. And I think it's because of the size of that roundabout. It is so wide, and there's no reason not to. And they also, as you approach the roundabout, if you are going straight as if you wanted to continue on Alice, you're basically in a straight line because the circle is so wide that you don't have to slow your speed at all, and people don't. And I do think that I know one of the things they mentioned too is a lot of the roundabouts in the neighborhood are similar, and there's no expectation that those are fixed. I think the difference is those are inside the development. They're not at the entrance like this one on Kyle is. This is seeing the bulk of the traffic, the 2 ones on Alice. And I think this Kyle one is seeing more traffic now that it's open to the vineyards. I mean, I'm hoping the improvement to Bog Road is going to help because I think people didn't like Bog Road and they would use the Sandwood as a cut through, and hopefully that might change it. But I think with Sonoma and 22 new homes going in, that traffic is just going to increase, and I think it's going to become more of an issue than it already is.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions of this applicant from the board? No? Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Do we have anybody else, Heather, that would like to speak from the public side?
No other members of the public, just Katie has her hand raised.
Okay, we'll let her speak as well if we could open her up. Go ahead, Katie, if you can unmute. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I think Reggie wanted to speak, so I'll let him speak.
Okay, great.
Just a couple of points of reference. When you're looking at if you look at the aerial photo that Katie supplied, the 2 cul-de-sacs on Alice Ave are identical. They're both the same design. That was the first design that was done for the neighborhood. So those 2 cul-de-sacs, both at entrances, one coming in from Borough Road, the other one coming in from Alice Road, which would, both service from Fisherville Road. So both of those are identical in nature and design as well. They drain the same way. They're a depressed cul-de-sac as the asphalt tips towards the center of the cul-de-sac and collects there and then travels outward. And you've got a raised island. The other ones that you're seeing in the second and third phase of Sandwood Crossing, for whatever reason, were designed differently. They've got a larger tabletop plateau. They have a secondary raised area around the cul-de-sac, which is still permissible to travel over by vehicle. It's got a sloped granite curb that's just slightly up, similar to what you guys are doing in other locations in the city, where you actually, just raise it a little bit and you have another feature above that. In some places it's cobblestone, in other places it may be asphalt, but your actual travel area still, is increased by that secondary area to travel up over. But the plateau itself is considerably larger in the grassland. Just by looking at it, you can see it's probably, maybe 2 times the size, maybe even larger than that. With respect to the travel that's coming in and out of the vineyards, for instance, I know that both Bog Road now being improved is certainly going to be a help, but I don't know that there's a lot of shortcutting, especially during the December season. There's a lot of speed bumps that are put in through the vineyards to prevent that traffic from being an easy route or a route where they can travel relatively fast to get in and out, or a shortcut. They have to go over, I think it's probably 4 speed bumps, and these are substantial bumps to get through the neighborhood to get over into the Sandwood Crossing development. So what you're seeing primarily through that area is really people from the vineyards that are trying to utilize either the gas station or the local store over there and accessing that for the most part. Not a lot of it is through traffic. It's actually residents of the vineyards that you'll see that are primarily using that. As to the the flow, in or about or around the traffic circle in the wrong direction, I would suggest that occurs pretty much in all of them. I've physically seen it myself out there. It doesn't matter the size. I've seen people going around the other ones as well in the opposite direction. When you're at that intersection, you look to your left and you don't see a car coming. It's natural. I don't want to say it's natural, but it's one of those things that people look at and say, hey, I can take a shortcut and just go to that, take that left and not go through it. I'd say that that's more of an enforcement issue than an issue with respect to the size of the cul-de-sac. The suggestion would be, and again to David's point, the more we put up in that cul-de-sac where the vehicles can't see traffic coming in the other direction, we'll tend to calm that, and we'll tend to prevent people from trying to just jump across because they won't know where cars are typically coming from. So they're going to have to respect the direction of flow more than they would if it wasn't there. My suggestion is to more or less heavily landscape those things so it solves 2 problems. One is it will create traffic calming. The second is, the neighborhood's doing a good job of trying to beautify those things, as they should be, because they're pretty barren right now, and I don't want to use the term ugly, but they are pretty damn ugly. And it would be nice to see something in there for everybody's purpose. My suggestion would be that, we had set aside $1,000 a lot to do this improvement. So there's about $22,000 that was set aside to do this cul-de-sac improvement. That's what was agreed to. Using those funds to beautify the cul-de-sacs, not just there, but some of the other ones as well. And I'll let the neighbors speak to this, but my opinion, if I was there, I would love to see that. And the key would be to use something that's drought tolerant, because we know that they're not irrigated. And I would think that if we do something like that nicely, that the neighborhood wouldn't mind mowing, the small area around it and letting the vegetation grow up in the center and do its thing and really beautify that neighborhood in those areas. Not that there's not trees on the sides of the streets and such, but this is really kind of, when you drive through, to me, the eyesore that would be better served.
So what you're saying is you'd like to take the money that you were going to use to do the improvements to use instead to do landscaping, the same. So we'd be spending the same amount of money, but just instead beautifying the inside of all of the
That's
islands
correct.
For the whole
neighborhood.
The whole neighborhood. That's what he's suggesting.
I'm confused. Can I ask a question?
Yep, go ahead.
With this $22,000 budget, if you move some of that budget to beautify the roundabouts, at what expense are you spending that money? Where is that money? Is it going to make a difference to landscaping that you're doing to the 22 new houses?
No, that's solely for this, that was solely for the improvements of the cul-de-sac.
Okay, thank you.
So those are the funds that I would be looking at utilizing to improve the cul-de-sac. There's, one of them they've done a pretty good job of already. The neighborhood's, moved forward to beautify it. There's a second one where they have put some shrubbery around it. I don't know what that shrubbery is, but it's very limited and sparse around that. There's nothing in the core center. It's just some shrubbery on the outside. And then the other large one has seen nothing as far as improvements for landscaping other than just the grass that's currently there. It almost looks like a helicopter pad. That's all you're seeing on those. I would take those funds, the $22,000 that was set aside, come up with a landscape plan, hand that over, actually have the neighbors participate in that, because they're the ones that are going to be responsible down the road to, not responsible, but probably will want to maintain it, and have them participate with what we do with that, because I think that it could really be beneficial for the neighborhood to do something really nice there. That's my suggestion.
So what's I need to get a better understanding from staff of what is in front of us tonight to look at other than the trees. But I want to ask the question as I hopped. The advantage of working from home is I got my big screen here and I can go onto another screen and look at a map view and an overview of the development. So I see, Alice Drive, Kyle Road as the one that we've been primarily talking about. And then as you go along Alice Drive all the way up to the top, and then you have another roundabout that intersects with Emily Way and over to 30 Pines. Those are the two that are the suspect ones that we're talking about now. When I look at the other one, which is Emily and looks like Army Way, and then Emily and Ty Lane, those two are much larger. So the impervious surface on has been reduced dramatically, and the circle itself is much. The inside circle, the inside diameter of the circle is much larger. So we're talking about the two that have got the red brick pattern. That entire red brick pattern in the other two is grassed, and is that a possibility to basically expand the internal center of the two of these to take over the entire area that's all the red area now, and just that issue that takes care of the calming a little bit. You still need the landscape, but or does the landscaping do the job and you don't need to do anything regarding people turning left? People turning left on Kyle Road concerns me, and more than the visual appeal of it. And I'm concerned that people look at it and say it's going to be quicker just to jump over. I understand the logic and I get that, but it is a little bit of a concern. So is any conversation about expanding the internal size of the interior of those two been talked about?
That's what the proposal that was approved previously was to do, and they're requesting to not do that.
Okay.
And only for the one at Kyle and Alice. The one at Emily Way was not part of this. So that would be an additional condition that planning board putting on if you were proposing that.
Okay. So, any other comments? Yeah, go ahead.
I would just note that the two members of the public who've been listening have raised their hands and would like to respond to what Reggie is saying. Okay. And my question after you hear them speak would be to the city engineer in terms of some of the traffic questions that have been raised to get his say on that. But just so you know, the two members of the public have their hands raised.
Let's hear them in the same order. So put Mr. Nugent up again if we could, and mute Mr. Katie and Mr.
Okay, we ready?
Yep.
Okay, so to address Reggie, the larger grassy areas would be absorbing more of the rain, so that would be less puddling. So the red brick is just stamped into the tar and painted. That's all it is. So you can see that it's being ripped up by the plows. It's a tarred asphalt surface. The reason the two larger circles on Emily was because it was a long time for phase 2 to be started. And again, we had met I think we met 3 or 4 times with the police and engineers regarding the size of the Alice Drive circles. And that's why they were changed when they did phase 2 of this development. The landscape, we've been taking a special assessment to HOA fees to try and landscape these and planting them ourselves. The shrubs that you're referring to on the Emily Amy circle are just lilacs. So they're native to New Hampshire. They'll grow 6-8 feet tall. The landscaping on the North Alice, the outer ring is just daylilies. So they're not going to get that big. And then we have lilacs in the middle and then 1 maple tree. So the maple tree gets, about the size of a house, 2-story house. So it's going to provide a nice area and shade and a little bit of blockage. But the reason we did the ring of lilacs on the Emily Amy circle was to leave a green space for the kids that wanted to play, because they do use the circles. So we left, there's space for us to mow because we do pay for the mowing for our neighborhood. So we mow the circles in here and some of the easements of the city and along the retaining pond. But we wanted to leave those. And then on the north part of Amy, there's a tiny circle. It's kind of like a lollipop. You only have the 5-6 houses there. It's not a cut through street. It's just a cul-de-sac. So that's a much smaller circle. And there isn't that secondary raised plateau in the middle. And in there, we just decided 3 trees, again, because there's a lot of young kids in that end, and they do use the circle. They do play in it. If Councilor Earl Pierce said that he goes through here, he's probably seen the kids playing in those circles. So the kids utilize them. Being in the neighborhood, we don't want the kids to utilize the ones on Alice. The traffic is crazy through there. So once they're in the neighborhood, into the other 2 largest circles on Emily, it's generally residents of the neighborhood that probably do have kids, and we feel it is theirs. And as far as the traffic count, I know with the COVID, but with 102 houses, assuming each husband and wife makes a trip or 2, or even their kids, if you're talking an average of 8 trips in and out of the neighborhood with just hours at each circle, so some going north through Alice, but majority of them going to Concord. But even half, that's still over 400 cars a day going through that circle, let alone all the ones that are cutting through from the vineyards, which a lot of them are just not, they are avoiding Bog Road, but some of them are also going to other parts of Concord. But I just wanted to point out those few that the larger area, grass area, would reduce the puddling because there's more grass to absorb the rain. And yes, cars are going left constantly. So that is a big issue. I don't really see that in the other 3 circles in our Sandwood Crossing development. It's mainly the 2 on Alice Drive, and it happens to both of them, not just the southern one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if you could promote that other person that wanted to speak as well, Heather, Michelle.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify on a few things I had said too about the traffic. When I was referring to the increased traffic coming in and out of the vineyards, I don't necessarily think it's people cutting through, because I agree, especially with Bog Road and those speed bumps. It's more of people from the vineyards, which is understandable, but that's where that increased traffic is. And that is also where now there's going to be 22 additional homes. And I think that was my understanding of why it was this circle that was being addressed, because the majority of the entering and exiting of Kyle Road is going to be the circle. People are less likely to come from the other end of Alice if they're coming to this side of the neighborhood. And I do think that a bulk of it is from the vineyards, because when there was a gate there before they built that smaller roundabout in there, we didn't have any of these issues. So it's because, there's probably, I don't know how many families are in the vineyards, but if we're 102 families here and I see how much traffic we have, when that gate was open, that probably adds another 300-400 families, and a lot of them do come through here. And I think improving the circle is just going to help. Obviously that traffic's still going to happen. It just will hopefully help with the speed and the safety of it. And because there is so much driving through it and going the wrong way. So that's a big piece of why I think it was focused on this circle and not necessarily the other ones. They're inside the neighborhood. Those are not main entrances and exits of the roads. And then just to kind of speak to the other pieces, personally, I would rather my street be safe, not pretty. I really don't care about trees. We've been working to install those ourselves out of our own pockets because we're not maintained by the city in those areas. I want my road to be safe. I don't care if it's pretty. We can deal with that later.
Okay.
That was
great.
it.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Okay, Dave, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I want to come back in our discussion points in our packet here. 2.2, in lieu of reconfiguring the roundabout, the applicant is proposing to provide additional landscaping in the landscape aisle. The city engineer and general services division support the request to eliminate the requirement for reconfiguring the roundabout. It appears that the roundabout is functioning as it exists, and there is concern that cutting into the path and patching the existing pavement may cause drainage issues and compromise the integrity of the pavement. Planning staff recognizes that a waiver was granted in 2011 to not provide a traffic study, partially based on the proposed roundabout improvements. Therefore, planning staff recommends that the applicant provide a memo from the traffic engineer indicating that the existing roundabout is sufficient and the reconfiguration is not required. In addition, this decision should be revisited if the applicant moves forward with the proposed future development of a large undeveloped remaining parcel. I'm gotta tell you, right out of the gate, I'm not. If I was sold a bill of goods and bought a property in this development and was told that those roundabouts would be reconfigured, I'd expect the developer to reconfigure the roundabout. So I'd want to say, hey, you told me they were going to be reconfigured. Now you go into bat and saying, hey, we don't really need to reconfigure them because they're working as effectively as they should. So I get two questions: Are they working effectively as they should? And does the city care about the look and feel of the roundabouts per se? I mean, engineering obviously doesn't care about the look and the feel in the grand scheme of things. If they drain right and if the cars are working through the roundabout correctly, that's the engineering piece of it. But I'm concerned about the appearance as well. Are they nice? Are they attractive? And is there consideration that needs to be made from the city's perspective? So if we could again kind of put you on the spot, Dave, but I read that specifically that says that we're in support, or the city's in support of requesting that they eliminate the requirement to reconfigure the roundabout. Is that the case?
Well, I think that was based on what we have today is anecdotal information, and of course I'm not discrediting that at all. But a traffic study has never been done, and back in 2011, a waiver was granted to not do a traffic study because the applicant at that time estimated that the subdivision would only generate about 200 trips a day. And so if we see that traffic volume is significantly more than that, I think that, and as well, if we see as a result of a traffic study that the speeds are higher, the average speeds are higher in particular, then I think it warrants some type of modification. Another concern we had was ripping into the pavement. Right now, the drainage, much of the drainage funnels into the center, and the catch basins in the roundabout are actually in the center of the roundabout. So to widen the roundabout means those catch basins actually need to be put to the outer perimeter, which I imagine is why the estimate is $22,000 to reconfigure that, because there's quite a drainage modification to make that work. So it's a big project to reconfigure this roundabout. From an aesthetic standpoint, I'm an engineer. I have my opinions, but I don't think it's the most attractive roundabout, but it's functional from a practical standpoint. But it was, I believe, the first roundabout in the city. And people, engineers were still experimenting with roundabouts at that time. And that's not how we design them today. So, there are definitely pros and cons to reconfiguring this roundabout. If needs and the volumes indicate that it's a problem, then I think that it would be warranted to make a modification.
But correct me if I'm wrong, if a traffic study was done and you found that 600 cars go through there a day instead of the anticipated 200 cars a day, the normal reconfiguration would be to make it bigger, or to make it more functional. I don't think the issue is making it bigger. A traffic study may prove that more cars are going through there, but so what's the end game of that? Are they gonna prove that more cars are going through it, and then how do you reconfigure that to address it?
Well, the roundabout has a very large outer diameter, and in fact, if you compare the inner diameter, that the vegetated circle in the middle is about 64 feet in diameter. Well, the roundabout in the center of Pennacook, the outer circle, the brick, the cobblestone circle, that is 64 feet in diameter. So it's not so much that that the inner diameter should be larger. It's that the whole thing is so wide, and so it's almost like having a 2-lane roundabout, and so it gives people, I think, drivers some additional level of comfort, because there's so much room, and also there's so much visibility. You can see all the way across it, and anticipate, hey, there's nobody coming for miles. I could just zing right around this. So all the other roundabouts we have in the city have a much tighter outer diameter, and so the curves are tighter, and when you feel more confined on any street, you feel there's more of a tendency to drive slower.
Okay, and again, I'm conscious of the fact that if it was good in when the original development was put in and we gave them approval to put it in, we can't come back 10, 12, 15 years later and say, well, it doesn't work now, you need to reconfigure it. And I'm conscious of that. I don't want to, be doling out that type of issue once the projects are still ongoing, even though they're still ongoing. Again, if we asked for a traffic study, though, the traffic study couldn't go until after the governor's order has been released and things get back to normal, which again would be, could be summer to fall before things get back to normal. Does that screw things up from the city's perspective, from your side, if you had to wait to do that?
Well, it wouldn't mess up, what engineering would do or how we would evaluate it. Once, if school resumes, let's say assume that school will resume in September, that may be the best time to do this study. And I'm acknowledging Councilor. But what that would do is probably push the decision out into the fall, in which time it would probably be too late to do this modification in 2020. We'd probably be looking to do the modification in 2021. But that would be something I think Mr. Moreau would address.
Yeah, so we'll invite them back in, Katie or Mr. Moreau, if you'd like to speak. Feel free.
Are we on?
No, not.
Yep.
Oh, we're on. Oh, okay. So just two things to clear up. The first one is our project on Sonoma Lane would add 200 trips, not that there would only be 200 trips going around the Alice roundabout. And also the catch basins in the center are staying where they are, and the drainage is going to be moving north and south down Alice Drive, so it would not be going towards the center anymore, just to clear that up. And I'd like to make a suggestion. Reggie and I were talking briefly. What about right now, the traveled way is 30 feet wide. What if we made that 12 feet? So we would actually leave the center alone, but bring the outside in. It would mean we would have to deal a little bit with driveways, but it would make the pavement less. What are your thoughts on that?
So again, looking at it from the overview, Beth, I don't know if you could pull up that overview plan of the, say, the Kyle Alice Drive one. So you're thinking of pulling that in. So you've got a 12-foot drive from the red to the edge, or from the
yes,
edge
from the red to the edge.
And
so
what is it now? 30 feet?
It's 30 feet wide, which is obviously the width of a road, which is might be why people are taking a left turn, because it looks like a road. So if we made the pavement, which would be pavement colored, 12 feet wide, and brought the outer diameter of the outer part of the circle in, that might help slow people down, and it wouldn't mess with drainage.
Okay, so that's certainly a viable option. What about the little triangles in the middle? So as I'm coming up Alice Drive into the circle, and I'm going to turn left onto Kyle Road. I've got the little painted triangle kind of in the middle there. There's obviously that's at grade, and that's probably just painted or stamped into the sidewalk. Is there any opportunity to raise? I don't want to raise it. I know it gets plowed over, and I know why it's there. Signage, putting a sign right in the middle, no left turn. Again, options to keep people from turning left when they shouldn't be turning left.
I think that would be something we would talk about with the DPW. I don't want to suggest anything right now, but I mean, certainly putting a sign in on maybe the road side, not in the center of the little triangle, saying no left turn, or something like that could be done.
So reducing the size of the circle and reconfiguring to a 12-foot drive aisle would cut a significant amount of the mass of the circle out. You'd still have a budget for landscaping in the circle as well?
We'd have to do the number. This is Reggie Morrow speaking again. We'd have to look at this and evaluate it. We haven't done that. This is just something that Katie and I were just looking at on the plan, and the suggestion seems to be viable, but I haven't done any of the math. The other way around, because of the way the drainage works, just makes things very difficult for that. Keeping it the way it is as a depressed cul-de-sac and allowing that water to collect where it does today works extremely well. But I understand, with the amount of pavement that's there, it kind of does create that ability to increase speed versus, whereas if it was narrowed down, it certainly would reduce that. So that's something that I think, we can look at. I don't know what it would do to the budget. And the other quick comment I wanted to make was just that the proposed change was just to this cul-de-sac. There is the other one downstream or north of this. There was no proposed changes at this time to that one. This was the only one that was proposed to be affected by any changes.
And this is the one at the Alice Drive, Kyle Road intersection? Okay. And the other one is what is that? The Alice Drive, Emily Way one?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So there's 3 driveway cut-ins on that circle. There's 1 cut-in on the, 1.5 maybe. One, I guess there's just really 1 in the circle on the other one. Any comments from the engineering side of the fence on that? Again, not to put you on the spot, Dave, but again, traffic calming and kind of getting some of the mass of that appeals to me. I don't know if there's any thoughts from the engineering side.
I think it would be, it's an interesting proposal. It would still be a difficult thing, an unusual thing, from a drainage standpoint. You still got to do something with the drainage because of that inner circle is essentially a funnel. So, I think what was just described may end up being a more complicated modification than just expanding the circle and tightening up the travel lane that way, but either way is a pretty significant modification to the roundabout. It's certainly something that could be evaluated if we're going to take a step back and do a traffic study, which we're saying would probably happen later in the summer, September. Then maybe there would be some time for the engineers to take a look at, okay, is there another alternative?
I guess I'm struggling with the traffic study. I just don't know what the traffic study is going to tell us. And again, if you've got additional development that's going to put more people in there that are coming in from different areas and development that's going to affect it eventually, I'm inclined to move forward if we can move forward, but I don't want to do it hastily if we think that the traffic study would show something. I mean, the other side of the equation, if this was too small and people were getting clogged up and backing up, and then I agree the traffic study would help, but it's so big now that I just don't know that, that the traffic study is going to show us anything. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that, or Dave, you addressed that before, but I'm inclined to think that some more work needs to be done on this, whether it's city engineering, whether it's Mr. Moreau and his team at Bedford Design, to come back to us with maybe a plan that does cut down the size of the circle, maybe put some signage in at that Kyle Road and Alice Drive intersections so there's no left turns or right turns off of Kyle onto Alice. I don't know. I'm up in the air for suggestions if someone like to make one.
You want me to just speak real quickly to the traffic study?
Sure.
I think it's likely that the traffic study is going to confirm the anecdotal information. People saying about that it's a lot more traffic than was expected, or that that people drive a lot faster. The problem right now is we've delayed about 4 traffic studies that we're planning to conduct, this spring and into the summer. It is, it's problematic not being able to do, quick confirmation how many cars are driving through there and what are the speeds.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from the board? Again, before us tonight is discussion points. Well, let's wrap up the public hearing piece of this first. I don't see any other hands up, Heather. So let's. Whoops! I just saw Katie and Reggie's hand go up. So let's take one more quick comment if we could.
Yeah, just a quick thing. I think to David's point, I think what we can do is pull this off the table for now. We do have a bond in place for the other for the improvements. So pushing this out a little bit to get a little more information is probably a wise thing, and we would be more than happy to work with David and City to take a look at this and see what we can come up with, as well as the neighbors, so that way there we can try to find something that's a solution that is good for everybody. We do know that what that budget is and what works best for everybody would be what I would suggest, and we could do a little more work on this and come back to the board down the road a little further if that's okay with the board.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Heather, what would you recommend as far as notification? I'd like to renotice it. I know even if it's a month, 2, 3 months down the road, I guess we don't want to table it for that long. So how do we handle it with having to renotice?
I think what a good suggestion would be just to table this portion of it and vote on the landscaping. If you want Reggie to renotice it, you can just ask him to have it renoticed. We're tabling it to no date certain. So
okay.
We should renotice it because we're not announcing that it's going to continue at the very next planning board meeting.
Okay, that's fine. So we'll, does that sound like a plan, Reggie, on your end?
That's fine.
Okay, so we can address the issue regarding the street trees and the planting, and then we'll table the portion regarding reconfiguring and looking at the plantings that'll go in and into the roundabouts. So how do we want to do that, Heather? Let's close the public hearing up. So we'll close the public hearing. Whoops! Just when I was going to do that, I got one more hand up from Michelle. So let's let her take one last comment here regarding it from the public hearing perspective.
Okay, more of a logistic question. When you're talking about like notifying, I assume for when the next time this is on the agenda, I'm not sure how it's done, but I only know of one person in our neighborhood who got a certified letter. So other than me checking the city planning board agenda regularly, none of us were notified, and I'm on Kyle Road. So I'm not sure how that notification goes out. I just want to make sure I don't miss it.
Okay. I don't know the answer to that. I imagine it's in the butter that probably got it. So if they're abutting this.
Opposite end of the neighborhood. She was on the corner of Sonoma and Emily, nowhere near here.
Wow.
First house from me. So.
Okay, well, I'll let Heather take that, or if you want to take that offline, Heather, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's close the public hearing. Thank you all for your testimony. And again, it's a perfect example of hopefully getting to the end result that the residents are happy with, the end result that the developer's happy with. We've got before us 3 in our packet, number 3, which is the recommendation. Which one, Beth? Help me out here.
3.1, because it's just a waiver for them to not have to provide all the information that we have.
And then
3.2.
3.2, and then we'll table 3.3. Okay, so would someone like to make a motion to on 3.1 that staff recommends the planning board grant the waiver to the major subdivision application requirements by only providing information applicable to this amendment request, and 3.2 staff recommends that the planning board grant the approval of the revised landscape plan as submitted, with the condition that if any existing tree counts towards the requirement are damaged or removed for construction, the trees will be replaced to remain in compliance. Would someone like to make a motion to grant 3.1 and 3.2 as outlined?
So moved, Councilor Pierce.
Second?
Second.
Second from Carol Foss. Do a roll call. All those in favor? Aye from Chair.
Vice Chair Foss. Yeah, you were muted. Sorry.
Sorry. Yes.
Member Regan.
Aye.
Member Hicks.
Yes.
Member Pierce. Councilor Pierce. I apologize.
Yes.
Member Rosenberger.
Yes.
I think that's everybody.
That is everybody. Okay, so we'll table that 3.3 and 3.1 and 3.2 be passed as outlined. So thank you very much, everybody, for your help with that. Sorry for the delay. Go ahead, Heather.
With regard to the people who did not get notice, I'm not sure if they send us an email or something, just so we have their contact information. They can send something to the planning at info@planning, I think is the main line, or even hshank@concordnh.gov, so that we can have your contact information, just to make sure that we can stay in touch with you when the next meeting is.
Great, thank you.
One more thing, we have to make a motion to table, and it has to be another roll call vote. Sorry.
Yes.
I was going to ask that. I'll move that we table item 3.3.
Second.
Okay, motion's made, seconded by Mr. Hicks. All those in favor, Chair is aye.
Vice Chair Foss.
Aye.
Member Regan.
Aye.
Member Hicks.
Aye.
Councilor Pierce.
Aye.
Member Rosenberger. You're muted.
Sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that motion to table has been successfully put through. So if we could take everybody off talking permitted on that, Heather, that would be great. We will move on to item 8 on our agenda item, which is any other business which may legally come before the board from staff level. Heather or Beth or Sam, any information that needs to be brought to the board's attention?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, any member of the board have any items that they need to bring up to the board's attention?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
If not, we'll take a motion to adjourn from Mr. Hicks. And who would like to second that motion?
Second.
Roundly seconded by Carol and several others. Okay, so motion to adjourn. I'm going to just do a hand vote on motion to adjourn. So those in favor of adjourning, for the record, is everybody gets a vote to adjourn. So we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. Our May 20th.
Bye, everybody.
Meeting is concluded. Have a good evening.
Good job, Rich.
Hey, we
Stay
tried.
safe.
Thank
Keep
you.
your distance. Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.